Have you ever stumbled upon a secret that changed everything? Richard thought his past was buried, until one unexpected reunion revealed a truth he could never imagine. Where are you watching this story from? Drop your city or country in the car. Comments. We'd love to know how far this story has reached. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss tomorrow's episode, where a long-lost letter might just turn the whole story upside down. The drama is just beginning. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. It was just another ordinary afternoon in Austin, Texas. The sun was high, casting golden rays on the quiet streets. Inside a small, family-owned diner on the corner of 3rd Street, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and grilled cheese filled the air. At one corner booth, a man in a sharp grey suit sat alone, scrolling through his phone. His name was Richard Collins, a 48-year-old real estate tycoon worth over $100 million. To most, he had it all: money, power, influence. But inside, there was a space that success never seemed to fill. That was when Emma Parker walked in. She wasn't expecting to see him. In fact, she hadn't thought of Richard in years, or at least she told herself that. She wore jeans, a simple blouse, and her hair was loosely tied back. She looked tired, maybe even a little nervous. She wasn't the same woman who stood beside Richard 2 decades ago during his rise and fall. No longer a wife, just a woman who had built a quiet, hidden life after walking away. And Richard, he froze the moment he saw her. At first, he didn't recognize her. But then, as she looked up and their eyes met, everything came flooding back. 22 years of silence were shattered in a single breathless moment. He stood up slowly, as if approaching a ghost. "Emma?" he asked. She nodded. "Richard." The air between them was thick, heavy with the weight of unspoken words, memories, regrets. I never thought I'd see you again," he whispered. Emma looked away. "Neither did I." He gestured toward the booth. "Can we talk?" They sat. For a long moment, neither said a word. Then Richard, voice trembling, asked the question that had haunted him for over 2 decades. "Why did you leave?" Emma looked down at her hands. "Because we were drowning. You were losing everything, and I was pregnant, Richard." He blinked. "Pregnant?" "Yes. I found out 2 weeks before the bankruptcy. I tried to tell you, but you were consumed by everything. And when you signed the divorce papers, I thought that was it, that you didn't want me, or the baby." His world stopped spinning. "You had a child?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Emma nodded. "A daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 21 now." Richard leaned back in his seat, eyes wide, heart pounding. A daughter? His daughter? Out there in the world this entire time. He had built skyscrapers, bought luxury properties from coast to coast. But nothing could have prepared him for this. A stranger who might carry his smile, his blood, a chance encounter after 22 years that would change everything. Richard couldn't sleep that night. After the shocking conversation at the diner, he drove home in silence, the hum of the engine doing nothing to quiet the storm in his mind. He had a daughter, a 21-year-old daughter named Lily, and he had missed her entire life. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, sat down in his office and stared at the flickering city skyline. For years he had told himself that Emma just gave up on him, abandoned him when things got hard. He never once imagined she was protecting something, someone. He picked up the phone and called his assistant. "Find out everything you can about Lily Parker," he said, quietly. The next morning, a file landed on his desk. Lily Parker, born in March of 2004 in San Antonio, attended community college, graduated with honors, currently working at a health non-profit. And, surprisingly, as a junior consultant at Collins & Coby, his own company. She'd applied under a different last name. No wonder he didn't recognize her. His hands trembled as he flipped through her file. Photos, school records, a resume that showed hard work, not privilege. She never used his name for anything. Not once. That afternoon, he confronted Emma again. "You should have told me," he said, his voice sharper than before. I had a right to know. Emma looked him straight in the eye. No, Richard. You had a chance. Back then you were consumed by the collapse of your empire. You didn't even see me, let alone hear me, he didn't respond. Because she was right. Back in 2003, when the housing market began to crumble, Richard had been too busy holding together his real estate kingdom to notice his marriage falling apart. Every day brought new lawsuits, angry investors, and banks calling in loans. He was fighting to save Collins and Cambus, and in doing so he lost everything that mattered. I wasn't trying to punish you, Emma continued. I was terrified. You were drowning in debt. Our home was in foreclosure, and I was 2 months pregnant. I needed to survive for her. Richard sank into the nearby chair. And you raised her? All by yourself? Emma nodded. We moved. 3 times. I worked 2 jobs. There were nights we couldn't even afford heat. And the worst part? Lily used to sit by the door every evening, thinking her dad would walk in. For years, she waited. Richard swallowed hard, his throat tight. I didn't know. I swear to God, Emma, I didn't know. She gave him a sad smile. I believe you, but that doesn't change what she felt, or the fact that for 2 decades you were a ghost in her world. Suddenly, it all made sense. Lily's guarded eyes, her drive to prove herself, her refusal to accept help. She wasn't just some brilliant employee. She was his daughter, raised to survive in a world where he didn't exist. Now, she was under his roof, and didn't even know it. The question was, what was he going to do next? Richard stood by the tall windows of his office, watching the city buzz below. Skyscrapers, traffic lights, the hum of ambition. He'd built an empire, one that stretched across miles and millions. But none of it could prepare him for the moment. He'd finally tell Lily the truth. She deserved to know, not from a file, not from whispers, but from him. So he called her in. She stepped inside with the same calm, confident energy she always had. But this time, something felt different. Richard couldn't ignore how much she resembled him. The eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. Have a seat, Lily, he said. She raised an eyebrow. What's this about? There was no easy way to say it. No script to follow. He took a breath, steadying his voice. I need to tell you something personal, about your mother, and about me. Her posture stiffened, her eyes narrowed. You're my daughter, Lily, he said, each word slow, careful. Emma is your mother, and I'm your father. Silence. The clock ticked. A horn honked 5 stories below, but inside the office everything stood still. Lily's lips parted slightly. She didn't blink. Then a laugh, small, disbelieving, escaped her. You think this is funny? She asked. Is this some twisted joke? No, Richard said quickly. It's not. I had no idea until last week. Your mother never told me, and now that you know, what, you want to play catch-up? Be a dad? Her voice cracked with fury. You want to shake hands, take a photo, and post it on LinkedIn. Like some PR stunt? Lily, it's not like that. Then what is it? She snapped. You've been rich for how long? You've had resources, connections. If you cared, you would have found us. I didn't know you existed, he said again, voice low. I thought Emma left me for another man. I didn't know she was pregnant. Lily stood. Her chair screeched back against the floor. I spent birthdays staring at the front door, she whispered. Watching my mum cry herself to sleep. Working. Double shifts at 16 so we could keep the heat on. And now you want to talk? He didn't try to stop her. He knew that pain. But he had no defense for it. I'm not interested in your money, she said, heading for the door. And I sure as hell don't need a father now. Before she walked out, she turned back. One more thing. Don't tell anyone we're related. I earned my place here. I don't want a single person thinking I got in because of you. Then she was gone. Richard remained seated, staring at the closed door. A man surrounded by luxury, yet completely powerless. She was right to be angry. But still, she was his daughter, and he wasn't going to give up, not again. The fallout was immediate. Word hadn't gotten out yet about Lily's connection to Richard, but something had definitely shifted. She stopped attending executive briefings, ignored personal calls from Richard, and quietly requested to be reassigned. to the Skyview project, the biggest development Collins & Co. had ever taken on. She wanted to focus, stay out of the drama. But drama had a way of finding her. At the heart of it all stood Vanessa Monroe, Richard's second wife and the company's current COO. For over 15 years, she'd been grooming her stepson, Jake Collins, to inherit everything. To her, Lily's sudden appearance wasn't just a family issue, it was a threat. In the boardroom, Vanessa kept a polite smile, but behind closed doors, she was already working the angles. "She's unstable," she whispered to one executive. "Doesn't follow protocol," she told another. "Could be a lawsuit waiting to happen." Jake, 25, handsome and sharp, didn't say much, yet. He had always played the loyal son, the clean-cut face of Collins & Co. But deep down, he knew his stepmother was using him as a pawn. And now that Lily had shown up, independent, smart, and strangely familiar, his instincts told him she was more than just another employee. And he was right. Late one night, Jake walked into the server room and found Lily still at her desk, cross-referencing permits, zoning maps, and investor portfolios for Skyview. "You don't sleep much, do you?" he asked, leaning on the doorway. She didn't look up. "I could say the same about you." He stepped closer. "I know who you are." This time she looked up, eyes sharp. "What do you think you know?" "You're Richard's daughter." Silence. She stared at him for a long second, then slowly stood. "And if I am?" Jake shrugged. "Then I know what it feels like to be caught in someone else's legacy." For the first time, her expression softened. "Maybe just a little." "Look," he continued, "Vanessa's already working on pushing you out. She's meeting with the board behind closed doors. You need to protect yourself." "I don't need anyone's protection," Lily replied, voice calm but cold. "Especially not from someone who's been groomed to replace me before I even showed up." Jake raised an eyebrow. "I'm not your enemy, Lily. But if we don't work together, Vanessa's going to win." At that, she paused. Maybe it wasn't just about personal pride anymore. Maybe it was about preserving the future of the company her father built and making sure it didn't fall into the wrong hands. Back in his office, Richard reviewed reports while Vanessa stood beside him, charming, composed. "She's not a good fit for leadership," Vanessa said smoothly. "If we don't act soon, this entire company could be at risk." Richard didn't respond right away. His eyes stayed on the numbers, but his mind was elsewhere. On a daughter who didn't want his name but might be the only one capable of saving everything he'd built. The battle for Collins & Co. had begun, and the boardroom was the new battleground. The next morning, Lily stood at the edge of the rooftop garden atop the Collins & Cumber building. The city stretched beneath her, glass, steel, and endless noise. Somewhere down there, people were moving through their day with no idea that her world had just cracked open. Behind her, footsteps approached. "It was Jake. We need to talk," he said, walking up beside her. "Vanessa's pushing a proposal to restructure leadership. She wants to dissolve the Skyview division. You know what that means." Lily's jaw tightened. "It means cutting off the only project that wasn't hers, the one thing that can put us back on the map." Jake nodded. "She's playing hard, and she's counting on you to quit." Lily looked down at her hands. The calluses from her non-profit days, the scars no one could see. All those years she fought to build something on her own, and now she was being asked to fight again. But this time it wasn't just about survival. It was about legacy. It was about family. Later that day, Lily walked into Richard's office unannounced. He looked up, surprised, almost nervous. "Lily, I'm not here to talk about the past," she said, firm but calm. "I'm here about Skyview and Collins & Co." Richard stood. "I know Vanessa's trying to shut you down. I'm handling it." "No," she interrupted. "I'll handle it, but I need your support, not as a father, as the founder of this company." He took a breath. "You have it." There was a pause. Then Lily added, "And one more thing. I'll stay, I'll lead Skyview, but no favors, no promotions. I want to earn everything." Richard gave a soft smile, the kind he hadn't worn in years. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." That week, everything changed. Lily took over the Skyview project officially, and for the first time her team followed her, not because of her name, but because of her work. She stayed late, pushed the numbers, fought through the red tape. Jake backed her publicly, risking his own position. Even the most skeptical board members began to shift. And Vanessa? She watched her plan unravel one meeting at a time, but the real change came quietly, in the small moments. A lunch Richard brought to Lily's desk, a photo she found of herself as a baby, hidden in an old envelope he'd kept all these years. A hug, not forced, not dramatic, just long overdue. Healing didn't come all at once, it came slowly, in fragments, in long silences and hard conversations, in realizing that forgiveness wasn't forgetting, but choosing to move forward anyway. And for the first time in 22 years, the Collins family, fractured and scarred, was starting to look like a family again. The boardroom war wasn't over. But now they were fighting for the same side. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on a secret? If the person you blamed for everything wasn't the villain after all? Lily's journey has just begun, and so has this. Emotional storm inside the Collins family. But now we want to hear from you. Do you think Lily made the right choice staying at the company? Can broken families ever truly heal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Whether it's one sentence or your own personal story, we read every single one. And don't forget to tell us where in the world you're watching from. Your words might inspire someone else who's been through something similar. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a drama. It's a story about forgiveness, family, and finding your voice. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got another episode coming tomorrow, and trust me, what happens next, you won't see it coming. This story's just getting started, and we'd love to have you on the journey with us.